This might be a fun, just you and I class. Oh, shoot. However, that'll actually be really good, because have you done the economic model or anything yet?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so it actually might be really good. I'm gonna go grab. Do you have paper and pencil? I'm gonna grab. I'll go grab some paper and pencil for, or like pen for you. You get your own personal little class. All right, so this is like the market centers. I'm gonna go over economic model with you first. So what we're gonna do first, if even other people would have been here, is just for like 2 minutes or so, just write down like if money didn't matter, if time didn't matter, if nothing mattered in the next 1, 2, and 5 years, so do it 1 year, 2 year, and then 5 years. What your personal and professional goals would be. I can give you like 3, 4 minutes to do that. And again, like, it can be huge, it can be little, it can be, I want to save a certain amount, I want to run a marathon, whoa.
Like, wake up.
It could be anything, right? So sky's the limit. I want to read 24 books. I want to read, you know what I mean?
It's one of these for hurricane.
What is that, 411?
Um.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No, it can be anything. Like, you don't have to have categories while you're writing it. I want you just to like brain dump, everything that you're thinking of in those 3 time periods. Or do you want to, for like the 3, 4 minutes, write your like personal and professional goals? Or both. Both would be great, for 1 year, 2 year, and 5 year.
1 year, 2 year, 5.
Yep.
1 year from today or 1 year including?
1 year from today.
And their dollar goals or?
Doesn't matter. It could be running a marathon, reading 12 books. It could be business-wise having 6 people on your team. We'll break it down, obviously, into something financial to be able to measure whatever that is. Like if it's, I want to go on a 6-month vacation, we'll talk about what that costs, right? Because I'm like, anything and everything, I want to donate, whatever. We'll break it down.
Okay, interesting.
Cool?
I don't like them up here.
On to you. That might have been Leah. Are you guys all done? Okay. Who wants to, well, you're both gonna share. You don't really. I like, who wants to share? You're both actually gonna share. So what I'd like for you is to share your personal and your professional, because I think we think about business as like, oh, it's only business. Obviously, the business funds the personal, so it's gonna be both, right? So, go ahead, share whichever one of you wants to start.
For year one, I would think to buy a property, visit Mexico, Rica. And see.
Iowa.
Not too many friends there yet.
I didn't.
I have
Okay.
some friends in Kentucky
Oh,
and some in.
oh, wow.
And then my best girlfriend is. us.
Oh.
She is gone.
Nice.
All right,
Nice.
Eric.
Year one, I need to get back to 5 to 8 units per month on average. I have a vision of a daily schedule that I would like to get to. On how that is, and that will fuel the units per month, I think.
Okay. Units per month is like, loans closed
My
or,
loan's closed, yeah, exactly. So that's, it's rather than do a dollar amount just because that
okay,
fluctuates. Yeah, and then the daily schedule is the, I guess that one's kind of, I don't have a full-on personal goal that I put out there yet, but.
okay. So when we look at these, and this is gonna be as if I was like consulting any agent, whether or not it's a brand new agent, whether or not it's someone that's been in it for a long time. What I would do right now, before we even do the economic model, is what is your cost of living? Coming into this class, I would take notes on that. You might not know that right now, but when I mean cost of living, I'm talking car payment, I'm talking rent, I'm talking house payment. Like for this, if you're gonna purchase a house, how much does that house cost? How much would the insurance be, mortgage, taxes, how much is food, entertainment? Like what does your cost of living right now, right? Because I think people throw out like, I wanna make $100,000. Okay, I'm not kidding, like it is probably 95% of the like brand new agents, that's what they say to me. And I said, okay, what does that mean to you? I don't know, it's like 6 figures and it's gonna be really awesome. Right? And the reality of that though is they might need to make more than $100,000, right? Like it may seem big to them, right? But then I say, okay, what's your cost of living? And if we break that down, sometimes it's like, wow, we're already borrowing 40, whether or not it's on credit cards or whatnot, right? So that's why like the nuts and bolts of like doing your business, I want you to get really granular. Like this is what it's going to cost me just to have a normal, not the frills, not the trip to Mexico, not Costa Rica, right? Like this is just everyday life. Maybe I go out to eat, once a month. If the coffee is something that you want to do, add in, $100 a week for coffee, like whatever that is, right? That's your cost of living. And I say that because when we're going to go through the economic model, it's your net income, right? And your net income isn't even with taxes, essentially. So, I mean, in regards to net income, because that really depends on what your tax bracket is, and that's gonna have to be something each individual figures out. Like if your net income is 100,000, it's gonna be very different than if your net income was 200,000, and depending on if you're married, single, yada, yada, yada. But I want our net income to be that cost of living plus whatever else you want that year, right? Because a lot of people say, I want to put $20,000 into savings, or I want to go on a really big trip. What does that trip cost you? What is the airplane ticket? What is the food going to cost you? What is the hotel going to cost you? And what is any entertainment that you have going there going to cost you, right? And I would always say upswing it. So if you're, you know, for me, I'm like, I went to Guatemala in whatever month that was, right? In theory, it costs like $3,100, right? But I put in 5,000 just in case. Like, okay, do you want to spend any money? Do you want whatever it is, right? Do you want to do any tours or fun? Add that all in, and that's how we're going to get this net income portion, right? Because we're going to want to cover that, the fun, the cost of living, and then extra, right? Because we're going to have taxes in there. So those are all things to think about when we're going through our goals each year. When I talk to most agents, they're like, yeah, I'm on track, right? But sometimes I'm not sure if they really realize what they're on track for. Like, are they on track for a goal that means something to them? Are they really on track for what it costs for them to live now? Are they on track for whatever arbitrary, I want to do 20 deals, right? Because sometimes they don't even know what that means. So when we break it down this way, and you can actually break this down the exact same way. So your net income, and I don't know how.
I'm W-2, so it's a little different.
Oh, it's a little different. Okay. But I'm like
Makes sense, though.
yeah, and some, like, you know what I mean? Depending on whatever.
Yeah, we're not.
But I think this is good for you to know too, for any agent that comes in, because it helps us, even as a group, even if you're not, you know, when you're in productivity and you're in a group with other people, it's like, hey, do you remember you said you wanted this goal? And the goal was because you wanted to go to Mexico. Like, wouldn't that be really crappy if October came around and you're like, I just don't have the money to go to Mexico, right? Like, I want to be able to help you get there. So, do we want to do a real live, what you potentially want as net income, or do we want to role play something else and you take notes on this and then we sit down and do this in more detail at some other point?
I think that-
Okay,
yeah.
okay, so net income, what would we want that to be for the next year?
So are we talking for like a new agent? Like,
Yeah,
well, I'll let you answer it because you're coming into it, but I was just gonna ask you, like, what have you seen with the new folks that you bring in and you go through this with people? Like, if you do an aggregate, like, what do people think they want to come in and do first year?
100,000 is always the
Yeah,
thing
that was
that
the
they
start.
shoot for. I would say it really depends on the personality type and how committed they are to the goal, right? If they're committed to the goal, what I have found is when someone needs this as their income, like they've got bills, they've got a family, they quit a corporate job, they like, this is their business, right? I mean, I've seen new agents hit 120 to 160 in their first year, right? But sure enough, you know that they're sitting in there and they're doing calls for at least 2 hours a day. And they're door knocking and they're doing all the things to ramp up that business.
Yeah.
Right? So we can use 100,000 because it's easier to use 100,000, but just take the notes of that as we're doing it. So 100,000 is the net income, right? So you're gonna ask, what are operating expenses? So operating expenses are anything that does not have to necessarily do with your brokerage or a buyer's agent or anything that has to do coming out of the transaction, essentially, right? So operating expensive, marketing, pens, paper, you know, whether or not you give closing gifts, I don't know, different events, right? Client events. Per the Red Book, if you've been reading MREA, they say it's 40% profit, right? 30% operating expenses and 30% cost of sale. When you're a brand new agent, this is not necessarily going to be 30% cost of sales, because if you're a brand new agent, your cost of sales as a solo agent is going to be $16,000, right? That's your cap. Because even your monthly dues that you pay in here for E&O insurance and for tech fee, that goes into operating expense. Okay, your licensing and your CE, all operating expenses. This is a really good spot when you look at operating expenses to find a P&L of a real estate agent where you're like, oh, because then the following year you can truly budget and say, all right, I'm going to spend this much on training. I'm going to spend this much on travel. I'm going to spend this much on closing gifts, because you're going to be able to figure out what is the per closing that you actually spend, right? Hey, I'm going to allot myself $100 per closing. $50 is actually, I think, the minimum for taxes. That it has to also have a, like, you can actually, yeah. Otherwise it has to have marketing on it, essentially. So operating expenses could be really depending on how you do business. If you're an agent that's going to go buy leads, right? That's an operating expense. If you're an agent that's going to buy leads and there's a referral, that's a cost of sale, right? So you go into Zillow and you're paying out 40%, that 40% is your cost of sale, right? Because that's a referral that you're giving out, when in all reality, your commission would have been 10,000 and you really only got 6,000. Right? So operating expenses for a brand new agent really depends, right? Depends on how many closings they're going to do, depends on so many different things. If I was going to say an average sales price for a brand new agent, it's going to be about 350,000, right? What is the commission on that? Because most of them are going to be buy side, so I just say 2.7. Always be conservative. Don't say 3%, because great, if it's a bonus that you have to do less units, awesome. What is the commission?
94.
Okay, so average commission is, and the only reason I'm doing this kind of opposite, right, is let's say you're going to spend, I don't know, $100 on each closing, because I always feel like people spend so much money on closing gifts and I just don't really understand why, but they do. So you're going to at least have 10 to 15 closings, right? So that's at least $1,000 to $1,500. Then it's another $1,200, right? Just for your fees. You're going to be at least $5,000 here. I would say, if you're doing things correctly, whether or not it's signs, marketing, whatever it is. This is going to probably be a minimum for your first year. Okay, so if we add this all together, what do we got?
21.
So this is going to have to be your actual gross commission income. So when you guys hear me talking about gross commission, right? So we do that on our report or on our awards every second week. That, like, last month, it was 1.6 million in gross commission income, right? So that's where it's like, get a piece of that each month, and then you've got to take out these other things, right? All right, so if we divide 121 by 9,450, what do we get?
12.8.
So anytime there's a 12 point anything or a point anything, I always round up, even if it's like 0.1, right? Because you can't 0.1 anything, right? Like, unless it's a referral, you can't. So I'm going to say 13 just to make it a nice round number. Okay, so do we know what this 13 means right now?
Right now, we're figuring it's 13 buyers that.
Nope. So this means you need 13 total transactions in 1 year to be able to net $100,000, with this being your average commission. Okay, so that's like a little over one month. You've got 2 closings, otherwise it's 1 closing per month, right? So if you have a very split business, which I'm going to tell you, there are not many people that are split 50-50, right? Everybody tries to figure it out 50-50. Most of the time, as a new agent, for some reason, new agents gravitate towards buyers. Why? Because they go into open houses and they're just like, ooh, come here, buyers, right? In reality, you can turn listings from that too, but we're heavier on the buy side. So to be realistic for a brand new agent, I'm going to put 80% over here. Okay, so And then I'm gonna put 20% over here because we've got to obviously make 100. So let's do the buy side first. So we've got 13 units times 80%. What is that? I'm gonna have you guys do the math on your calculators because it's easier to process when you're actually doing it versus me just popping those numbers up there. What's that number?
10.4.
Okay, so we've got 11 total buyer listings sold. Granted, this is gonna come up higher because I'm, again, raising the number. So we need 11 buyers. So that's less than one buyer a month closed, okay? So what is the conversion rate of a buyer? And we gotta be very honest about this, right? So when you have a buyer signed, they're your client. How many buyers does it take to close a transaction? Like actual listed, they have a buyer contract signed, they're your client, you get them into a house, and you get them into a house quickly, right? How many does it take?
2.
I'm gonna say your conversion rate is probably max 50% as a brand new agent right now, especially with just multiple offers. I mean, buyers will end up falling out and they'll go into rent. I mean, if we want to be very, very conservative and realistic, I would say this is going to be 30 to 40. I know that does not sound awesome right now, but I truly believe as a new agent, you should put it lower than saying, you know what, every 2 buyers, I'm going to get into a house. Right? So we'll do 30%. What is 11 times 30%? Or divided by 30%?
Oh, you want, so it's 30.
33, right? So you're gonna. 36. So you're gonna need 37 buyers listings needed. That means you're gonna need 37 buyers. And this is really low. This is really low for a reason, right? So don't freak out and be like, oh my gosh, that's so many buyers. So you're gonna need 37 buyers needed, right? Signed, representation, not just randomly out there. This isn't pipeline, this is signed buyers needed. What is your conversion rate? How many out of 10 appointments, how many of them sign with you when you're going to work with the buyer? Out of 10 appointments, how many of them actually sign buyer representation and are your client?
5%.
Depending on who you are, you can have a 80% conversion rate on that, right? So 37 divided by 80%. What is that giving you? So you're gonna need 47 buyer appointments. Again, remind you, as we're going through this, I am taking in all consideration with this piece. When this changes, and this is where tracking comes in handy, right? When I was selling, I was at an 80% rate here. Even with multiple offers, right? I had a buyer, 8 out of 10 of them, I would get from buyer to closing easily, right? Right now, if you don't have the value and you don't have the confidence of like, how do I get them in? And you lose out on 6 of them. And then they're like, you know what? I don't want to do this. I'd rather rent. That's where this low percentage comes in. This can be higher. And if you've been in the business for a little bit, you know that this is higher and you go and you have 10 buyers signed, they're your clients and 7 of them are closed. Great. Now you're at 70%, right? That shrinks this number by quite a bit. But even with this being said, 47 total appointments is less than 1 a week. Even if you take 5 weeks off. Okay, so 47 buyer appointments needed. Let's go over here, right? listings sold. In regards to listings sold, this is gonna be a higher number, right? I mean, inventory is still low. A lot of listings are still selling. I mean, you're probably, some are high, some listings aren't selling because there's not a motivation there, right? So you're not at 100%, you're not at, I would say 2 years ago, you were at like 95%. You listed a property, that thing was sold unless it was unsaleable, right? Total, like, I mean, in regards to, oh, let's do this first. 13 times 20%, what is that? Okay, so three listings is what you actually need to sell, right? So conversion rate for that, I would say you can be pretty confident at a 70%. So 3 times divided by 70%. What's that number? 5. Okay. You go on 10 listing appointments. How many listings do you sign? I want you to be very real with yourself on this, right? Because I think sometimes we think, oh, it's 100%. Well, I'm going to tell you, if it's 100%, you're not going in on enough listing appointments because you are going to lose out on listings. For sure, right? Even if it's a referral, sometimes you can lose out. So if it's 100%, I would challenge you to go on more listing appointments than what you're going on, right? If you're a great listing agent, I'm saying you're probably at 70%, 70 to 80%. I'm just gonna put 60 in here. Again, these are just numbers that we're putting in here to talk through. You can put whatever numbers you want in here. But if you're gonna put conversion rate numbers that are higher, you better really be working on your skills, okay? Like, I'm talking scripting, going through your listing appointment, going through what your numbers look like, going through your CMAs, showing your value, having a value prop ready, right? So those are the things that make these numbers go up. So 5 divided by 60%. So you need to go on 9 total appointments throughout the year. Okay, so total, you've got 56 appointments. How many weeks are in a year? Okay, so 56, let's just say you take off 4 weeks. Let's just say, right? You take off 4 weeks or it's total, whatever. What's 56 divided by 48? Guys, that's 2 appointments a week. This is where I get like really calm. And I think about this. Appointments aren't easy to set, right? But if all you have to do in your job to make $100,000 a year, and again, this is super conservative. If you're honed in on your skill set, this and this number with different conversion rate, you're going to be at 175, truly, a year. But 2 appointments a week, if we are not making those, what are we doing? I mean, that's truly the case, right? Or we're not doing nothing. We haven't figured out what we need to work on. Right? We either haven't figured out that, man, I need to time block in my calendar to lead generate more. I don't care if you call it relationship building. I don't care if you call it lead generation. I don't care what you call it, but you need to talk to people. And you need to talk to people that want to buy or sell, right? And when you do that, this becomes very natural. Agents that you see walking around this market center that are putting up 12 million in a month, I can guarantee they're having 2 of these a day. That's taken time, right? That's taken time. But 2 appointments a week, if that was your only goal, you're sitting there on Sunday night, right? great weekend. You're resetting for the week. And you tell yourself, my only goal this week is to set 2 appointments. Do each one of you believe you could do that? I know you can. The difference is that you have to want that, right? You have to want to put the time in to sit there and work on that, right? And then sometimes people will come up and they're like, man, I've been calling and I can't turn any of these leads, or it just seems like I'm not setting any appointments. And that's when we go into the mechanics of it, which is okay. I've set a gazillion appointments with agents, yet our growth in regards to producing agents has not been high. Not because I'm not doing the work, but when I sit down and I talk to my coach, I'm like, man, I do 250 dials a week. I make 100 contacts, I make the appointments. And for me, I'm like this, right? And then all of a sudden I forget about the follow-up with that appointment. Well, the first appointment was great. Maybe we didn't sign it. And then I forget about it because I'm focused on the 250 dials. What I've done is I've changed that because I'm like, okay, I now have a ton of people I've talked to at least once and I've had appointments with them, right? So agents are a little bit different, but that's how I have reflected on my own goals. Am I on track this year? Absolutely not. I am not. But I'm not going to say it's because I haven't done the effort to get there. It's what else do I have to change to make the closing happen, to make sure that we get the agents here, right? That's a difference. I have to reflect on what the mechanics are, what my conversations are, and how I'm approaching that. So you can do all these things, right? So now we go back to set 2 appointments a week. Now what we want to do after that is say, how do I do that? Okay. So like yesterday and today, we started the lead gen group from 10 to 11. From 10 to 11, the reason that that board is out there is so people can see what they need to track, right? This is the starting point. You're going to get more and more in depth with what you're tracking from that. But right now it's dials, door knocks, whatever you're doing in your lead generation. The activity, if it's 100 doors, you knocked 100 doors and you got 10 contacts, how many appointments did you get out of that? Right? Because now you know your conversion rate. Sometimes what I would put in there is the time period. For this, it's an hour. So for me, I know I can get 50 to 55 dials in an hour, which usually equals out between 15 to 25 contacts, depending on who I'm calling, how short the conversations are and what time, right? But that I know can happen. And normally it's 2 appointments. That's what I can do in an hour when I'm on Mojo. So the more you track that, the easier it's going to be for you to actually have a life by design. Because if you can say, hey, in 2 hours, I can make 20 contacts and 2 appointments. I'm not giving you permission, but if this is your goal, that you can work on Monday and Tuesday. You can lead generate, you can negotiate, and you can go on those appointments on Tuesday. You can do it all in one day if you want to. Like that's real. That's real. That's very real. You guys are like, no, it sounds really simple. No, it actually is really simple. It's actually super simple. It's super boring. It's super disciplined. It's very annoying. And yet I'm going to tell you, when you do this, your life and whatever you wrote down for that 5-year goal will absolutely happen. No doubt in my mind. Because once you have a taste of this and you're like, I worked on Monday and Tuesday and I made 100,000. I threw in some open houses in there on Saturday. What do you think the next year is going to look like? Maybe I'll add in Wednesday. It's very real. I mean, I was talking to some of the top producers last week because we were just talking about how do we get people motivated? How do we get them back in? What is the real definition of the job of real estate? And the real definition that like from the time I was a baby in the industry, which was now 14 years ago, right? it was 20 contacts a day or 2 appointments set. And that was your success. And contacts means you've had a conversation about real estate. That's not like, hey, I called mom and we chatted about how my business was doing. Unless mom is buying or selling or mom's giving you referrals, that does not count, right? But I'm like, that is legitimately how simple this is. 20 contacts a day or 2 appointments set per day. For this goal, you don't even have to set 2 a day. What would that look like if you set 2 a day? And then you're like, man, I'm too busy. I'm too busy. You know what's awesome about that is we have Profile, which can take up for all of your transaction coordination. And people are like, I don't want to spend that. I guarantee you will spend the $300 for transaction coordination if you are able to make 300,000 plus because you're too busy because you had 10 appointments a week. Would you guys agree? Okay, have you taken all the notes that you need on this portion? You can take a photo. Yep, because I'm going to erase this and just kind of talk a little bit. I'm actually going to go into the 411 portion, not the GPS portion, because then this is something that we can hone in, even on our accountability, right? Are we good? Okay, so the 411, does anybody know anything about the 411? I mean, we're really good. GPS, why do we have a GPS? Because it gets us to where we're going, right? 411 is information, usually, or 311, right? But truly the 411, the reason it's that is because it's your annual goals. The first one. The second one is your monthly goal. And then it's broken down into your 4 weeks. Okay, so on every single month for your 411, your annual goals are on there, right? The only things that change are your monthly goals and your weekly goals. The 411 is also something that, for anyone that's in accountability, it's more than the goals that we go over. Accountability, we only go over those 3 to keep you on track of the most important 3 for that week. Right? So on the 411, there's a lot more than what we talk about in our accountability group. So let me go over this again. So it's the annual goal. You guys all have one. There are 2 N's in annual, right? And then monthly. And then 1, 2, 3. So 1 week, week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4. This is what it looks like. Do you have one? Do you have a copy of one? A 411? Did she put them up here?
Yeah, I didn't get that.
Do not just, this one is not my favorite, by the way, this particular, did you get one? This is not my favorite, yeah, you're welcome, format. I keep my 411 to business and personal. When you get more advanced in regards to how you set your goals, you can put a business one in there, which is the money, right? It's actually called job. So it's business, personal, and job. For me, business is tracking like profit margins, like all of that. Job is the actual lead generation, right? So, but that's just not anywhere we need to be right now in regards to, I would just X out that last line if I were you, just to not confuse you. So annual, you're going to do in a 411, you're going to do your business annual goal, right? So, and then you're going to do your personal. Same thing here, business, personal. Shocker, the only 2 goals each week are business and personal. All the way across, right? So when we talk about business goals, a lot of people want to say a volume. I don't like that. The reason I don't like volume, you can have volume in there, but I would say also have units, right? Because at any point in time, if you're like, I want to sell 6 million. Okay, that's great. That could be 2 houses or that could be 12 houses. And in order to track this, unless you are going out to find people that are selling their $3 million house to make your life a little bit more efficient, you just, 6 million can be kind of a roundabout, but let's start with the units first. Or at least have the volume and then break that down into a very manageable number of units, right? You can't say my average sales price is 1.2. Yes, there are people that do have that as their average sales price, but it's usually not just like right out the gates. And that shifts, the market shifts, that 1.2 is now 800,000 and your whole income just shifted. Right? Because it's very dependent on volume. So business, you can do volume, right? You can do units. You can do building, you know, I want X amount of team members, profit. I'm thinking of all the things that agents can do in the business portion. It could be budget, right? Like I want to stay in this budget. I want to stay with these expenses, right? It could be a million different things in the business side. For annual. For annual, also on a business side, you can say, I want to build a brand with a newsletter that is 12 months long, right? Like there are so many things annually that you can say. In this section for the annual, you can say, I want 12 newsletters, right? A monthly newsletter going out. I want 3 client events. I'm just giving ideas of what to put in that business section. And again, we can build this out together. If you're like, hey, I want to meet one-on-one and go through this. I want to go through my expenses. I want to go through what 100,000 really means to me or whatever that number is. Personal, sky is the limit here, right? For me, I have like miles run. I have books read. I have workouts. I have, journaling. How many journaling entries do I have? I have trips. I have savings, like things that I want to put away for savings. I mean, this could be anything that does not relate to your actual business. This literally could be anything for your annual, right? But then what we're seeing is that's on the top, right? Now, what we do is we shift everything down, right? So, and it does, like, there can be things that you add in a month that aren't on your annual. Like maybe something came up and you're like, man, I need to put together a different listing packet, right? So that can be a business goal, right? Listing packet, or I want to ramp up my social media. Like that doesn't have to flow down, but this is a reflection each month. Are we moving towards this, right? So if we have 56 total appointments and that's 2 appointments per week and there's 4 weeks, this means that the monthly goal would be 8 appointments set. That's the goal, right? Fun thing about this is if you don't make that goal, let's just say we only made 6. Now next month, we're going to put 10 so that we keep tracking, we keep looking up, like, how is it filling the funnel, right? Like, is it doing what it's doing up here? And then, okay, if you wanted 12 newsletters, you bring that down. Well, we need to do 1 newsletter this month, right? So now we get to go down. And then what do we get to do? We get to like break this down even more, right? So now we have 8 appointments we need to set this month. Well, you know what? I'm actually not going to be working this week at all, right? So I'm going to do 3 appointments this week. I'm going to do 3 appointments this week, and I'm going to set 2 appointments this week. Right? So, oh, look, I got my 8 appointments. Now I've fulfilled, like, it all feeds upwards. And the same thing here. Man, this week, this other thing came up. I'm getting a listing live. I need to do listing landing page. Cool. That can be a goal on here too, right? I need to start prepping the newsletter because it goes out the second week. So I need to do rough draft today or research, right? And then this week it's like, send it out. That's how the 411 works. And when you do this, I'm going to tell you, life becomes so much simpler. Because I sit down every Sunday and I do this. And I feel like, oh, I have a family, or I don't have a family, or I have a partner and I don't have time. I actually make my kids do it with me.
It's time you spend on.
Well, I know the goals already, right? And so it really takes me 20 minutes to be like, okay, where did I track last week? Where do I need to come up with things? What are some other things? But then again, I also have journaling usually before that. And I'm like, okay, where's my headspace at right now? Where am I lacking? What do I need to do? So I would say give yourself 30 minutes at least. But every single Sunday, I have it in my calendar, business prep, weekly prep, whatever you want to do. That gives you the space to not then come in on Monday morning and be like, what am I going to do? Right? When you're prepping on Sunday night, and if you don't want to work on Sunday, prep on Saturday night, right? And you can have your Sunday, if it's like Sunday fun day, go do Sunday fun day. Do whatever, then do it on Saturday night. Or if you don't, if you want the weekend and you're not working on the weekend, do it Friday night. But just know, have these intentions set before you come back into work on Monday. Right? And the fun part about this is that when we come in on Wednesdays, when we do this, you already know what your goals are. We're not sitting here and we're not thinking like, man, what should my big rock be? What should my productive be? What should my whatever be? You're like, well, I'm behind by 3 appointments. So my productive should be 3 appointments set this week. And if it's not 3 appointments set this week, I need to at least make 60 contacts this week to make sure that I can get at least 1 appointment, because every 20 contacts I get an appointment. Now do you see where this tracking comes into place? And all of a sudden life becomes a little simpler.
Like, how much time do we waste? Just like, oh, what am I gonna do today?
Well, and that's why in the lead generation portion of like what we're doing from 10 to 11, bring your list. Bring 25 people that you can call during that time frame so that you can just make those calls, right? Know what you're gonna do, because that's the scariest part, is like, well, I don't know who to call, or I don't know what to do. Okay, if you don't know who to call, go make some vendor relationships as well. Build up your vendor pool, right? When I didn't know who to call, I didn't want to look up random numbers. That's why I door knocked. 1, I was outside, I was walking. 2, I could then see face to face someone versus the easy hang up, which I got like 6 times today, by the way. And I was like, I'm gonna call you again in 6 months, and you're now noted as being a jerk. But like the face to face, right? You can be like, hey, you can actually have a conversation. They don't want to sell. Awesome. How long have you lived in the neighborhood? Oh, 6 years. What's your favorite part? XYZ coffee shop. That's awesome. I just want to make sure that I know more about the neighborhood as well, because my buyer's really interested in it. Cool. Have a great day. Moving on. Right? Like, that conversation feels very different when you have zero attachment besides the fact of value added. And there's zero rejection in that. They're just not selling. Okay, great. They're not selling. They did not like me. And if they didn't like me, okay, that's fine too. Next. I mean, go back to elementary school. How many times did you try to go talk to someone and they were like, walked away, or like, no, you can't be my like my group, right? You wouldn't cry in the corner or whatever it was. I didn't. I probably punched him, walked away, and found a new friend. Like, for real. Like, we all had our ways, but like, that is what has been ingrained in us, is like, think about how in your life you've handled rejection. Right? Because that's what affects you when you're lead generating. And then like kind of dig deep and weird into that and be like, why do I react that way? There are so many people in this world that you can connect with, that the 20 people in one day that are going to reject you, awesome. I really only need 2. So that's awesome. Go about your day, do your thing. And the 2 people that do want to work with me and like me, that's all I need. I don't need the other 20 people that rejected me. It'd have been great if we got into a relationship, but they didn't want to. Okay. guys have questions? We got about 2 minutes. No? Well, and honestly, when you break it down like that, when the market is different as well, right, and your skill set is different, I think you'd be shocked that you're gonna need like 24 appointments. And honestly, that might be where you're at right now, but I want to be more conservative and get you to make the appointments and the calls and the contacts versus like, hey, you need 24 appointments. You need to work 6 weeks. In reality, that's probably what you need to do. Some people are like, oh, it's so tough. It's so tough. Not, I mean, yes, but it's really simple. It's just tough to do it because you don't want to do it. Correct.
And already telling you what those people you call are gonna say before they say it.
But here's the other part is how much more fun is it for me? Maybe I should just talk for myself, but like coming in and scripting and doing the conversations with people and knowing that everybody else is calling in that hour and that we get to put those numbers up on the board. Like we get to put the numbers up on the board, right? It's fun for me to be like, I'm going to get through this hour. I'm going to make the dials. I'm going to make the contacts. I'm going to try to help these agents. And whatever the outcome is, the result is the result. Right? Like I can go make more calls if I got a 0. I got a 0 today, right? I have no appointment set today. Now I have the option after my coaching that I have with Jacob and whoever else, right? Whatever appointments I have today, I have the option to say, you know what, I'm gonna get back on the phone. I'm gonna make 2 appointments today. Or I can walk away and say, I did what I had to do today and that it is what it is. But whatever choice that I make is gonna tell me what the result is probably in 6 weeks. And then there's days where I'll crush and make 6 appointments in a day. Like, I mean, it's like all of a sudden you just hit. And I'm like, okay, that was fun.
A little bit more.
Correct. Yeah.
Feel hard to be able to be like, oh, Mondays, my average is really low, so, maybe I do 2 hours on Monday instead.
I would also take a pulse on what your energy level is. Right? You come in and you're like, how many calls? I can guarantee you that's what it's gonna sound like over the phone. Like, I don't care if you have to do push-ups, jumping jacks, you have to like listen to a certain music, breathing, whatever it is, like whatever gets you into who you are and what makes you confident or feel powerful, do that thing. Like whatever like shifts that mindset, do that. No matter what, do that beforehand.
I think like a good script, there's something to a good
Mhm.
script.
Yep. Well, and it's always like the objection, not being surprised by it. Hear it, right? Like hear the objection and be like, man, I hear you on that. A lot of times agents will say, I'm really happy. I love that you're happy. Can I just ask you though, like, where are you tracking on your goals this year? Well, I'm really far behind. They're not happy. I mean, I'm not happy. I'm not happy when I'm not tracking on my goals or monetarily, I feel stressed. Like, as much as people say that money doesn't make you happy, no, it doesn't make you happy, but it makes life a lot easier when you're not worried about where your next paycheck's coming from or, am I gonna be able to pay a bill or like, it does. Like, no matter what we think about the green piece of paper or whatever, that is it funds something in regards to making the life that you want. Because we no longer trade goods and services, rarely do people do that, right? Like we have a currency. All right, I'm gonna leave you with that. I'm gonna also send out to everybody a format for the 411. You can actually find it on, I think it's somewhere in the KW. Candy knows where it is. But it is good to have it online because like what I do, I'll show you guys mine. Mine's called a scorecard. It's a lot more intense. But what I like to do when it's online, if you're a checklist person, you can check them off if you print it out. But if like for me, I love seeing the colors which is semi-checklisty, right? But then I can also track. I can send you this. I can send you my scorecard too. Just know you're gonna have to edit it in different ways. I'm gonna show you January just because it's filled out. I'll come over across the way. Okay, so like my annual is up here, right? This actually does, and then here's the goal, here's the actual, here's the goal, here's the actual. So I actually fill this back in, like I feed it up. And then it's the same thing, and then it's weekly, right? So it's got business, it's got personal. I get to say, okay, here's my goal. Like I'm gonna do 250 dials. That week I did 250. This week I did 286. When I don't make it, it's red, right? And it's super nice for me to be able to put that in. And let me tell you, when you do that, it's like, you can't lie to yourself. Like you can lie on here if you want, but you're literally then just cheating yourself out of whatever the goal was, right? And then it's a reality. Like, look at this week, it's like red, half red, half green, and I was like, what am I doing? Right? Like, what was I doing? Like, that's where you get to like determine, like, okay, is that what what was I focusing on? And then that comes back to, it all flows in here. I'll let you see it. It all flows in. We do the economic model, we do the 411, but the 411 also has to be reflected on our calendar. Okay, so that's the other key piece. If it's not in your calendar, like I'm gonna lead generate these times, or I'm gonna set 2 hours to do the newsletter, it's not gonna happen because we're really good at like going on social media or, oh, I'm gonna go sit at the beach today 'cause it's nice out. Like I was thinking about this morning after I got done working on it. It's like, man, when I was an agent, I would like do my work or I'd come in late and then I'd go and sit and do whatever and I just could whatever, right? But like I still met my goals because I knew I had to do that. But there were days where I literally, if I wanted to be honest, there were days that I could have worked 3 days a week. In reality.
And that's why it's-
But you have to be committed enough to like, because a lot of people are like, oh, I'm gonna make the goal and that's okay. Well, then that's not your goal. Well, it's like marketing based versus prospecting, right? And I'm like, people don't like prospecting, but your job is to prospect. Like,
Like Wisconsin.
I will look into that because I like with anything, right? Especially when you're looking for a buyer. You're not really selling anything to the sell side, like I'm looking for a buyer. So I'll look into that, on what that looks like. I'm the worst. I am the worst when it comes to, this is recording, so I probably should, I'm the worst when it comes to that, like even with door knocking. I'm like, why? The do not call list is a real thing though. Like, do not call list, people are getting really upset about it because, I mean, I get like 25 telemarketer calls. So do not call list if you do it from like a Mojo or whatever, right? You can press the button that it'll filter out all of the people that are on the do not call list, right? So it'll take out, if it's 600, it'll take out 200 people, right? I would not call them. Like the do not call list, I would not call. That is like a hard, there's so many lawsuits that are happening because of that. But if you have just a list of people, there's a website that you can look up the number and see if it's on a do not call. So if it's like you randomly get a list somewhere, I always put it in, like if there's anything I would spend money on, it's a dialer. Only because it's like you can put it in there and then it'll shovel out, like you can put a CVS in and it'll say, okay, this person do not, like it will recognize that versus.
And Command has like the function, right?
Yep, and Command does as well. Yep. Because that's a big no-no. Just like you can't put like door knockers in a mailbox. Why do I know that? It's actually a federal offense and I almost got that slapped on me. Like, You can put it on their door, you cannot put it in a mailbox. You can also put it in the newspaper one, right? But because the mailbox is a federally regulated way to deliver mail, unless it has a stamp and it's been through a post office, it cannot be put in there. I was not the one that did it, but I had people door knocking for me and they just slipped it in there. You know, and a lot of times, like in old homes, they have like the spot. Can't do that. That's still the mailbox. You can't put it through the spot. Like, you've got to just put it in the door, like in the handle or whatever. Yep, yep. And that's all, if it's not a smart plan that's already been made in Command, right? Because there's a gazillion different smart plans that are in there where it's like, it's an 8-week plan where you go door knock or you send out the email, then you call this week, and then you can create that in there too. So it's like, hey, I got this new listing and I went and door knocked that, and now I want to call them in a week. A lot of times when I would door knock, I'd door knock on Monday, I'd call them on Friday and say, hey, I was just curious if you got the, you know, the flyer that I left at your door, or if I met them. Hey, I'm just following up. We have this open house on on Saturday, this time. I'm hoping to see you there. Then the next week, I would probably follow up again, right? And just say, hey, I want to let you know there were 30 people in this open house. We ended up getting an offer. Just let me know if you've heard of anybody now that you've got some activity in your neighborhood, right? And then you can, if you have your email, then you can do emails within that too. And it sets up tasks for you. So when you go into your to-do list into Command, it'll be like, call Joe at 123 Main Street, right? And then it's like, it's right there. So again, it's all here. It's just a matter of doing it. And once you do it, you'll be successful. And people are like, yeah, but maybe I'm not as personable, or what. I'm like, it doesn't matter. There's people that aren't as personable that you'll be in business with, right? Like super introverted people are like terrified of me, right? But I'm not usually in business with them. Even if I try to like correct, like overcorrect for it, they would pick somebody else potentially, and that's okay. Yeah. All right, I gotta run into an appointment.
All right, thank you.
Have a good day.
You as well.